It's a great comment, Derek. That's that in it. Obviously, it's probably a little different for Amanda because it's built from the ground up with those intentions, so it's easier to design it in from the start. The interesting is for well-established brands who discover who their consumer is, it's kind of like they pursue consumer X, but discover its Y, and they're almost not happy about it, even though they're still profitable, making money. And some of the clients I've worked with, and even for Joseph, that's really how it started. I mean, obviously Coca-Cola wasn't built for the black community specifically. Obviously, there is a discovery and affinity for it. Same thing with Toyota Motor Corp, and even McDonald's. But then they acknowledge, wow, we have they are amidst our super fan. Now, the some of the things that you see between the custom meals from with Burger King, inspired by hip hop artists. I mean, they make it clear, like, look, Travis Scott's not going to get in here and start cooking in the kitchen, but hey, we'll do something inspired by you as a meal. I mean, so you can see there's some level of acknowledgement in the design of going to market. I mean, stuff like that is essentially inherently pretty big. That's probably about as close as it's going to get. The interesting thing is when you see brands that are sort of dismissive of when they discover who their future or existing consumer is or their growth consumer is. We saw this with Timberland, Nautica, Ralph Lauren. These are brands like, well, we're getting the black community. We're not making it for them, and then the black community defects, and now all of a sudden, massive profit drops off at those companies because they were the driving force and engine behind it. Just imagine had those companies collaborated with this community to build the future design aesthetic for clothing and for shoes, and where those companies would be. And clearly those were major and massive missteps, well documented. So I think people understood the lesson of not acknowledging, but we still haven't gotten to the point where people are bringing them into the fold to help design product and its success. Again, with all the sensibilities as it pertains to black and brown communities to ensure their essential success. I think that is an area that needs massive improvement, probably across every respective industry. Maybe beauty is the one that has the lead because there's so much at stake, and it's highly personal and ownable to the outcomes, and it's very unique to each individual. The second one would probably be the food category, just because it impacts you physically in your body. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I don't even know if the average organization has given thought to how that would shift product development, with it being more inclusive of these type of communities, and what type of perspective, and yet what type of success. I think only apparel with shoes has done it because they use major stars, starting obviously from the Jordan era all the way up to the LeBron era and in the Yeezy era. But other than that, there has not been given much to that. But those are instances that are almost foolproof because the market is already primed. You could just put out a turd of a shoe and it'll just get bought. But there's still so much opportunity for pulling that into the thinking in other categories. Even on our Lexus account, we do share with the brand what are the things in the product design that pique greatest sensibility for our Black, Hispanic, and LGBTQ consumer, and those need to be the talking points in all the creative executions. So we do make it very clear that feature you talked about is not as relevant, but these are. And when it comes down to variant of the models, these models are what peeps and it's going to pop better in the research versus those. So there at least is some respect to what has been created, what is essentially going to resonate the strongest. And look, I'm not expecting them to, do what Dodge did and have a black designer in Ralph in designing the Charger and the 300M and the Viper and stuff like that. Those are very unique cases. But clearly the success that Dodge saw was that having a black man at the helm in terms of building product with power, all that sort of bravado that's very much is part of the Dodge's original DNA, carried forth in the black community, really operationalizing Chrysler Dodge products in music videos that really propelled the brand. And then obviously the alignment with platforms like Fast and the Furious, where it had a multi-ethnic cast, helped fuel that as well. So there are instances where brands have taken a step back, figured out how to bring the sensibility of black and brown communities into the fold, and have catapulted forward and have built on top of an even better, bigger DNA. But I don't think a lot of people are taking note as to how that can be operationalized and change the market trajectory of their products. a lot of brands don't understand what is already within their DNA to do something. It's like there's basic human good in every individual. There's basic human good opportunistically in every organization. I think what people have to do is look at what most aligns to who they already are. And I, applaud the brands that kind of know who they are, so they know what their message is going to be. And again, Joseph gave a great example. If you don't know what to do, let someone do an Instagram takeover and be the messenger. Just make sure they align with who you are as a business, and perhaps, there's they can become a brand ambassador, or they already are, or what have you. And that opportunity abounds with brands are just using influencers in general, or have strategic partnerships looming. Those are easy things to essentially activate. I think some of it is understand how your product is being consumed. In particular, if it's at retail spaces, then the message is very much about be safe out there, essentially, because look, you got to go out there to come to our place, or to reach these places to buy this. I mean, I think some of it is that basic human truth of what's right in front of a brand, that you could essentially do that to raise some level of consciousness and sort of thread the needle to align. And look, you can't be around every message. You can't culture jack every message, every narrative, but you can pick the ones that are very inherent to what you do. I mean, look, all these companies have a mission, a vision statement. Half the time, what you should do is already embedded in what some PR firm spent hours and days conjuring up. You just need to figure out what is the tangent tied to that supports what we do, so we're not stepping out of the wheelhouse and it's all of a sudden like not believable anymore. And I think that's what it is. It's that level of underachievement and not doing the same diligence in understanding opportunities for your narrative as a business that is put into your channel marketing play and your supply chain and manufacturing and product design. I mean, it's just essentially diligence, but nowhere near as complex. And the other thing is, to the point of what Amanda's saying about listening. If you don't know what to do, first talk to your consumers and say, hey, what would you like to see of us? What should we be doing? You probably care more about this, and there are more of you than the 5 of us in the building. How can we help empower your message by embodying a bit of your beliefs and values, and then pick a few that don't compromise essentially the enterprise and stay with them? Because that growing equity means you just create an evangelism beyond the brand that is not transactional in nature to move the business essentially forward. I think what happens is you just have organizations that on that note have gotten lazy. Look, I joke about it with people. There was a time where corporate communications mattered, where there was all these derivatives, issues management, crisis management, PR, public affairs, brand promotion. I mean, it's like 20 of them. Then all of a sudden everything became direct response. And now people are rediscovering that corporate communications does matter, and having a strategy matters to the degree that you could execute an actual message in the marketplace. So now we're seeing a return to needing to have that in the repertoire, when it was literally forsaken, in the sense that, look, our influencers do this, and then our product marketing message is all about sell at this price point and at this location. And now people have to take a step back and say, look, there has to be communication savvy in what we do, because the stakes are too high. And this future generation, to Joseph's point about future-proofing, will pause at nothing to turn us off if we make a grave misstep, or they just discover, well, you were never really committed to us in the first place. So I think when you start to look at beyond the internal narrative and the resources, is that organizations need to future-proof their spoken identity. I think there's a lot of talk about the visual identity, but not about the spoken identity. And that's very much about when people bring you up, what do they say? Now that spoken identity requires someone to say, well, here's how they support disadvantaged communities or communities of color, this type of community. That has to be part of, kind of the way Tom's Shoes was all about donating a massive part of the profits to, building and development in Africa. I mean, as soon as you said Tom's Shoes, that was the next thing you said. That was their spoken identity. Easy to do it when you do it from the ground up and you're very mission driven, but a lot of organizations are going to need to take a step back and figure out what they're going to own before someone sort of calls their bluff on that.
Totally agree.